Peter Gleeson, thank you for joining me on Church and State. A lot has changed in journalism in the last 3 decades. A lot has changed in technology and even consumer demands and expectations. What are some of the better things that you think have changed for the better?
Well, I think the consumer now has a voracious appetite for news. Nothing has changed in relation to the consumers, the readers' appetite for knowing what's going on in the world, whether it be internationally, nationally, state-wise or local. Everybody still has an appetite for news, for what's making news, for an analysis on what's making news. It's just that we consume our news now differently. So 35 years ago, when I first got into journalism, the main way you consumed your news was either through newspapers, TV or radio. Mm-hmm. Nowadays, it's done through those 3 vehicles, but it also is done on the mobile phone, it's done on tablet, it's done on your computer, it's done through Facebook, it's done through Google. There is a disruptive environment for news. And it's everywhere. And I mean, you can be walking down the main street of Brisbane and look up, and there will be a billboard there that will have a ticker along the bottom that says, Trump threatens to, or Trump says he's happy to meet with the North Korean dictator. Yep. He would be honoured to meet with him. And you would have read that this morning in the Courier Mail. You would have read that this morning in websites, news.com.au. So there's even more diversity these days around news. It's just how do we consume it? And because we've become a lot more of a sort of this sort of fast food, need it now sort of mentality. Yep. People are consuming their news every hour, every minute of every day. Now, newspapers provide, I think, the cream on the top of the news offerings. So with newspapers, you're going to get the investigative stuff, you're going to get the analysis, you're going to get probably the story behind the story. And TVs are the same. I mean, a show like 60 Minutes or Four Corners are still outstanding TV, and they really do a wonderful job at explaining the story behind the story. So, sometimes I lament the sort of fast food type mentality around news that is everywhere, because I am a big believer that you should know the full story, the whole story, and when you only get little bite-sized versions of what's going on, it can be somewhat misleading. But there's been a lot of change. There will continue to be change. We have to adapt as a society and as a newspaper company and as a news company. We're not just a newspaper company anymore. We are very much a news company. Yeah, that's right. We have to keep adapting to what the consumer wants. And it's funny, people talk about how newspapers are dying and, they've seen better days. And yet, you look out at our newsroom, we still have more journalists than all the other newsrooms in this city combined.
Wow.
So 9, 7, 10, all the radio stations, Brisbane Times, put them all together, and the Courier Mail Sunday Mail newsroom is still bigger. And we still sell 330, 340,000 on Sunday, 160, 170,000 during the week. I have a readership of close to 1 million.
Does include your online audience?
No, that's just readership of my print product.
Wow.
Online, we have 3 million readers a week.
Wow.
3 million readers a week. So, I often think to myself, while people are very quick to try and dance on our grave, we're a long way from being dead. And, you know, I think...
And innovation's a key part of that, isn't it?
Massive
You're
part
not just doing what you did 20 years ago.
Absolutely. Innovation's the key. You know, we have to move with the time. We have to be innovative. There was a wonderful piece on our website the other day about Jeff Horn and Manny Pacquiao and the fight coming up on July 2 at Suncorp Stadium. And it was a fantastic, world-class look at Horn, his you know, how he's come from being bullied as a kid. You know, he's a school teacher, how he learnt to fight, and it was a narrative that included video embedded into the and it just looked wonderful, and I mean that's the sort of thing.
So how does the 24-hour news cycle and the consumer appetite for instant news influence journalism and journalists to be fast and maybe even first instead of factual? How do you avoid your staff getting that balance wrong and compromising factual in favour of first? Because first is still a consumer demand that you have to cater to.
And first is admirable, and first is a great aim for any journalist to get it first. Accuracy is still the number one driver of consumer sentiment and consumer demand when it comes to news and the media. You must get it right, and if you don't get it right, there are massive penalties there. You know, your credibility is affected, your reputation is affected, and we do see it all the time now in the current environment, where in the race to be first, some people screw up. Yeah. Some people get it wrong, and they are then. There have been many cases in recent times, too many to sort of look at individually, where people have tweeted something, Facebooked something, published something online without full verification of the facts, and it's finished up being a train wreck. And that is the danger nowadays for journalists, and that is, it's all very well to get it first, and we encourage that, and we demand that in many respects, but you must never compromise accuracy for getting something out there first.
Do you think a journalist can separate their personal, private opinions are my own Twitter feed from their role and identity in the public eye as a journalist?
I think that's a very good question, and I think it's not so much can they, it's they have to, and invariably, I mean, I'm not on Twitter. I'm not on Facebook, and the reason...
Is that strategic or just lack of appeal?
I don't trust myself on Twitter. I mean, I'm opinionated, and I'm paid to have an opinion, and I'm paid to make judgments. I just think the Twitter sphere is full of wankers, and I would be a prime target on Twitter, and so why would I let wankers get under my skin on Twitter? And so rather than even engage with these people, I mean, there's other forums. I mean, I get bagged on Twitter anyway without even being on Twitter. So I get bagged I get letters to the editor all the time bagging me about certain decisions I've made. So why would I put myself up there where people can actually take potshots? That said, I think there's a role and a place for Twitter, and it's certainly a wonderful way to get your message across. I mean, look at Donald Trump. I mean, to my mind, I think Trump's addicted to Twitter. I think he loves the fact that he's got 30 million followers, and I think he loves the fact that he can evoke such strong responses. And of course, Trump says that he's got Twitter because he wants his news to be sort of unfiltered and not sort of analysed or extrapolated upon by the big media organisations in the United States. And I guess to some extent he's probably right. But I think journalists, to come back to your original question, journalists need to differentiate between what they do and say on Twitter and how they report the news. And do you
think it is possible to have the two different public personas?
Well, I think it's possible. I don't think it happens a lot. I see some of those people who work for Fairfax and their sort of left-wing ideology on Twitter, and then I read their stuff, in The Age and the SMH and the Brisbane Times, they're very similar. So the argument could be mounted that they can't differentiate between their own personal opinions and how they do their job. And you could probably mount the same sort of argument for people like Andrew Bolt and Marina Devine, who are centre-right.
That raises a whole can of worms I want to get into. Let's do it in the next segment.
Sure.
Thanks for watching. If you really enjoyed that video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. Have a look at this great video next, and check out the website for even more interesting articles and episodes later.